Mario once again with MIA Microflight. Today is Friday, September 12, 2025. In this video, I'm going to be talking about the construction of my MIA 1.25 size pilot flight suits. Why this is quite a laborious process. Well, first of all, you got to start with patterns. Obviously, just like in the garment industry, you start with patterns, and it's the same steps that you take with full scale or the in the garment industry. And I don't come from the garment industry, just to make that clear. All this stuff is stuff that I learned from my mom. My mom was actually a fashion. She had a master's degree in fashion design and confection. Confection means manufacturing, and so she knew all these things. She studied. She had to study the human anatomy, both male and female, in order to understand, how to take measurements of the body, where to take the measurements, etc. I learned a lot by watching my mom from earlier years. Is it something that I employ, throughout my whole life? No. I started doing this when I established MIA Microflight, and so I had to force myself to go back to what I remember my mom doing, and actually I started taking apart actual garments, full size garments, to understand how they were sewn. And so a lot of these things come from that, that type of my own experimentation, my own points of references I'm explaining here. So, but anyway, I had to formulate my own process here, because when you work at this scale, there are, I believe there are a few ways, maybe not so many ways, but in mass production, you would not approach it the way that I'm approaching it. Obviously, because in mass production, you want to maximize profits. You're on a time deadlines, etc. I don't have that issue. I have the luxury of doing this at my own pace, and I take my time. So that the product comes out, in my opinion, right, and much better than something that would be mass manufactured. And I'm going to explain that in this video right here. So you start with basic patterns. Like I said, there are two pieces that make the back. There are two pieces that make the front. There are two pieces that make the sleeves. The legs obviously are part of these two panels here. And then once you're done with that, you have to join the pieces. In order to join these pieces, even as you see them here, there's no offset in overlap. You have to attack glue the pieces. And the way I do that is with a little bit of the edge of the hot knife. I join the pieces, for example, right here, and I put a straight edge right above that. This is fiberglass, something that's not going to burn when you run the hot iron through on the edge, and you come across that, and you have basically sealed that. Now, once that's sealed, you have a good parallel joint that you can come back and just establish your sew line. And so that's how I join these pieces, and I do it by sections. You can't do it all in one piece, because then you risk having those those hot heated seams come loose. So you have to do it in logical, in methodical ways. So once that's done, I basically start joining I do the crotch first. And you can see how I start here, and it's a double stitch here, or reinforced stitch at the top, and you come back here and you run at the bottom, you back into a few stitches, and I cut it off right there, and that allows that stitch to retain itself and doesn't come loose. But if you were to end just right there with no double stitching to the back, that's gonna unravel, at some point. So that's how I do every single stitch. And when I say every single stitch, is this is a stitch right here. It's not a continuous stitch. I don't go from this point, for example, all the way here and then come back and do all this stuff right here. I don't do that. In mass production, you have to do it that way, because I don't think you have the time to do what I do here. So I take every section and I double stitch it at the start, and also at the end. I start right here, I end right here, double stitch back to reinforce that and secure that. Same thing here. You can see the double stitching when I start here, and the double stitching when I back off. And I always back off three stitches back in reverse, and I end it right there. I don't come back again. So that leaves the stitch well embedded in reverse into that strip of stitches. And so every section that you see here is a one continuous stitch. So that's a stitch, that's a stitch, that's a stitch, that's a stitch, that's a stitch on that side, the back side, that's a stitch, that's a stitch, that's a stitch. And as far as the zipper is concerned, these are Velcro pieces that are, stitched on the similar ways, to both sides of these flaps. And then once that's done, I flip this over and I start doing the color. The color is where's my color pattern? This is just a pattern, just a kind of cardboard pattern. But actually, I make similar patterns in fabric or in ripstop nylon. In this case, I sew this. I make almost like a pillowcase. Turn it over. It's nice and not finished, and then I sew this along the edges right here in reverse, in similar ways to that I explained here, so that I end up with a full flight suit. As you see, these other flight suits that are already here. This is more of a little more elaborate, playing around with patterns here, but basically you end up with something like this, and it ends up, a well sewn, very nice, well done flight suit with, enough time to produce that type of product. Some other flight suits here that I've been working on. And so that's how I approach my sewing here. It's very methodical. It's laborious, time consuming, but that's the type of product that you end up with, if you're one of my customers, as far as the flight suit. Now, there are more steps here involving the body. I do the bodies, soft bodies the same way. I do the 3D printed, the head, the arms, the legs, and I explained those in some other videos, but this is about the flight suit. Mario, once again, stay tuned for more.